Okay, Eugene.
All right.
Hey.
Roll the sound.
Okay, sound is rolling.
Okay, so Eugene, this is your second piece.
Episode number 2.
I'm super excited. And what is the title of this piece?
So the title of episode 2 is Our Great Shared Space.
That's a great title, but what inspired it?
Being annoyed. Because last year, and for those that are going to listen to this episode, you will hear me say this again, but last year I became so annoyed with people because it was almost like people forgot that America belongs to more than just their group or their friends or their beliefs. And out of my mouth one day when I was having a conversation, I became very irritated and I referred to America as our great shared space. And great because I freaking love this country. Love this country.
No, it's so interesting. I mean, I'll just share a little bit from our personal relationship. So you started off, this piece is supposed to go in a totally different direction,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so do you know why you decided to go in another direction?
Yeah. I don't know if it was well, yes, you can call it that. I just felt that I was going down the wrong path. The entire point of me doing these episodes is for us to all realize how much we have in common. And where I was headed was more divisive than it was all about unification. And I'm really glad that the feeling that I had corrected me because I was not going down the path of unity. It was more so down the path of beratement. Is that a word? Beratement?
That's close enough. I think people get it.
Beratement.
That sounds like something I would say.
No, that sounds like something for you're skiing. Y'all got some of that beratement.
Give me some of that beratement oil.
Beratement $1.99.
Okay, so we're clowning. Come back. So let me ask you this. So, say for instance, somebody just is their first time seeing your podcast. Mm-hmm. Actually, maybe not the first time. What do you hope people take away, after hearing your podcast?
This episode? Oh my gosh, I hope people take away joy and courage to go and talk with those that are not like them. We don't take advantage of the diversity in this country.
Religion is a powerful tool. Throughout the history of man, the religious have used their beliefs to build and destroy, bring great light and immense darkness, liberate and oppress, be an aid and a hindrance. They have progressed mankind forward and at the same time beckoned us to regress. But the saddest thing to me for many is that their religious beliefs have opened up doors to understandings beyond the known universe. And at the same time, simultaneously, these beliefs have been used to not even get to know their neighbors. I remember the first time I sat down with some Muslims, and it was for a ethnography assignment I had for a seminary class. The group that I was part of decided to work with Muslims, and honestly, it was because we had an easy hookup. Because one of the group members knew someone that worked with doctoral ESL students from the Middle East who were studying at USC. Now, where I'm from, USC stands for the University of South Carolina, all right? And this was gold for us. They needed to practice English, and we needed to make NA. All right. So we worked out a time and a date to meet at a Mediterranean spot in Colombia that was near the university. The group and I arrived first to make sure we had a game plan on how the night would go. They were genuinely happy to meet these guys. Again, I just wanted to make an A. The students arrived. We stood up and greeted them with handshakes. We sat down. We thanked them for coming, exchanged names. And then something happened. I went silent. Mute. Now, if you know me, I'm a talker and I actually like to meet people and get to know them. But at this meeting, I said nothing and I heard nothing. I can't even tell you what the guys were saying to us. Even now, I can picture the faces of the students and see them talking, but I cannot recall one thing they said. And at one point during the dinner, one of the group members leaned over to me and asked if I was okay. And I shot back, yeah, I'm good. He asked why I wasn't saying anything. In other words, he was really saying, Eugene, why aren't you pulling your weight? But it's okay. It's a fair question. And I told him, dude, you guys are doing a great job. I'm just gonna listen to you guys talk. You guys are asking great questions. He looked at me a bit bewildered and then he rejoined the conversation at hand. But that wasn't the truth. And he knew it. He knew it. I could tell on his face that he knew something was off. The truth of the matter is, as soon as we sat down at the table, I kept seeing media clips in my mind. And not just any media clips. I kept seeing video footage of 9/11 on repeat. It was like I was trapped. My brain flooded with image after image after image after image of the World Trade Center falling, the people running through the streets, and I could hear the voicemail messages loved ones left before they died. And before I knew it, these men were no longer students from USC. They were terrorists that attacked my country, that killed innocent people, and they worshiped a God that told them to do all of it. I was furious, and I could not pull myself together. I just stayed silent. When the dinner was over, the guys we were interviewing left, and before the group I was with departed from the restaurant, I opened up and told them what happened. I told them everything. The clips, the anger, how I didn't even want to sit at the same table as these guys. I told it all. And when I was done, they were all quiet, and you could see them looking around at one another like, you gonna take this one? You gonna say something? No, not me. We've all been in that situation. But one of them finally looked at me in the face and he said, Eugene, this is why we're doing this assignment. And I said, yeah, I need this. And I'll be honest, that was one of the moments I became exponentially grateful to live in America, to live in a country that allows for ignorant people such as myself to freely sit down with someone of a different faith and have my life changed for the better. And I think it's a freedom we often take for granted. Last year, I began to use the phrase our great shared space when referring to the United States. And this phrase shot out of my mouth one day after I became irritated with people refusing to acknowledge or accept the fact that America does not belong to one group, not one religion, not one political ideology, not one ethnic group, not one sexual orientation, not one anything, except Americans, the people, its citizens, and those that we allow to visit sometimes. But all 330 million of us from various ethnic backgrounds that practice hundreds of religions and denominations, one study stated 313 of them, we're all just trying to figure out how to live together on this 3.8 million square miles of land. This inclusive land. I love the lines that were inscribed on a bronze plaque and placed on the Statue of Liberty. It reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Whew. I know that the Statue of Liberty was given by the French as a symbol of friendship, but these lines from a sonnet written by Emma Lazarus in 1883 for me encapsulates the American ideal that everyone belongs. Now, when it comes to our nation's history, religion has always played a vital role. Heck, it's a major reason why we were founded in the first place. Kenneth C. Davis wrote an article for the Smithsonian Magazine titled "America's True History of Religious Tolerance." And in it, he writes, "In the storybook version most of us learned in school, the Pilgrims came to America aboard the Mayflower in search of religious freedom in 1620. The Puritans soon followed for the same reason. Ever since these religious dissidents arrived at their shining city upon a hill, as our Governor John Winthrop called it, millions from around the world have done the same, coming to an America where they found a welcome melting pot in which everyone was free to practice his or her own faith." Now, the problem, Davis writes, is that this tidy narrative is an American myth. The real story of religion in America's past is an often awkward, frequently embarrassing, and occasionally bloody tale that most civics books and high school texts either paper over or shunt to the side. From the earliest arrival of Europeans on America's shores, religion has often been a cudgel used to discriminate, suppress, and even kill the foreign, the heretic, and the unbeliever, including the heathen natives already here. And this is the behavior that they would have picked up from their own homes in Europe. Let's not ever forget the bloodshed that took place on that continent. At the beginning of the 16th century, all Christians living in Western Europe were part of the Roman Catholic Church. This was led by the Pope based in Rome. The church was extremely rich and powerful. And during this time, England was an entirely Christian nation. That means the church governed how people lived their lives and how they understood the world. All major life occasions, birth, marriage, death, happened in the church. It governed people's social lives, punished moral wrongdoings, and even marked the passing year with the calendar festivals. Changes in the church had a political, economic, religious, and social impact. But everything changed in 1517 due to a German priest named Martin Luther. Martin Luther attacked the church's practice of indulgence. He called the church out, stating that there was nothing in the Bible said that you could buy forgiveness, and it was wrong to let rich people buy their way into heaven. Protestantism was born. And to Luther's luck, a new development helped spread his teaching swiftly across Europe: the printing press. But to be honest, poop really didn't hit the fan until 1521 with the Edict of Worms. Now, this edict, issued by Emperor Charles V, condemned Luther and officially banned citizens of the Holy Roman Empire from defending or propagating his ideas. This edict signaled the first overt schism, and the world as they knew it was about to change forever through an onslaught of conflict. For roughly the next 100 years, it popped off in Europe. In the name of religion and political power, hundreds of thousands of souls were hurled into eternity due to 30 wars, revolts, rebellions, uprisings, and feuds, beginning with the Knights Revolt that took place from 1522 to 1523, all the way up to the Bohemian Revolt in 1618 that ended in 1620. This includes conflicts such as the German Peasants' War, where up to 100,000 peasants and farmers in this one isolated event were slaughtered. All of those deaths combined wouldn't even amount, though, to the deadliest war of the time, the 30 Years' War. This war lasted from 1618 to 1648, mostly fought in Central Europe. The impact of this war was the devastation of entire regions. I am talking decimation. Widespread famine and disease devastated the population of the German states and other places. It is projected that anywhere from 4.5 to 8 million people died. Germany lost about a third of its population. The Swedish army, which wasn't even necessarily the best army in the war, it was estimated to have destroyed 2,000 castles, 18,000 villages, and 1,500 towns during its tenure of 17 years in Germany. Governments were even left bankrupt. So when we discuss the arrival of the Pilgrims and Puritans, let's not forget the times in which they lived. And it shouldn't be a shock that that kind of mindset traveled across the Atlantic with the early settlers, which gave way to religious infighting throughout the colonies here in North America. 8 of the 13 British colonies had official or established churches, like the Carolinas with the Church of England. Each state constitution differed in its policy on religious establishment or state-supported religion. In Massachusetts, only Christians were allowed to hold public office, and Catholics were allowed to do so only after renouncing papal authority. In Boston, 4 Quakers were hanged between 1659 and 1661 for persistently returning to the city to stand up for their beliefs. In New York, Catholics were banned from public office. Delaware required an oath affirming belief in the Trinity. In Maryland, Catholics had civil rights, but Jews did not. In Virginia, where many Anglicans loyal to the Church of England resided, was the scene of notorious acts of religious persecution against Baptists and Presbyterians. Anglicans physically assaulted Baptists, bearing theological and social animosity. Before the war in 1771, a local Virginia sheriff yanked a Baptist preacher from the stage of his parish and beat him to the ground outside, where he was also delivered 20 lashes with a horsewhip. Similarly, in 1778, Baptist ministers David Burrow and Edward Mintz were conducting services at the Mill Swamp Baptist Church in Portsmouth, Virginia. As soon as the hymn was given out, a gang of men rushed the stage and grabbed the 2 ministers, took them to the nearby swamp, and dunked and held their heads in the mud until they nearly drowned to death. Changes regarding how the states handled religion wouldn't be seen until considerable time after the Constitution of 1789 and the First Amendment religion clauses. Now, since I just mentioned religion and the Constitution, let's just park here for a second. Here we go. In 1779, Thomas Jefferson, governor of Virginia at the time, drafted a bill that guaranteed legal equality for citizens of all religions, including those of no religion in the state. The bill did not advance until 1784. Now, you guys being great students, you're going to ask the natural question, well, what happened in 1784? So glad you asked. On January 1st, 1784, Patrick Henry, yes, the give me liberty or give me death, Patrick Henry, put forth a bill for the state support for teachers of the Christian religion in Virginia. The next year, June 20th, 1785, James Madison came back with a response. It was an essay titled Memorial and Remonstrance Against Religious Assessments. Madison went in. And I found myself chuckling, guys, I am such a nerd because I actually went and read Henry's bill as well as Madison's essay. And Henry's bill was like a page and a half, and Madison's essay was like 7 pages with 15 points. And he listed reasons as to why the state had no business supporting Christian instruction. Now, Madison's argument became a fundamental piece of American political philosophy, a ringing endorsement of the secular state. He also made a point that any believer of any religion should understand that the government sanction of a religion was, in essence, a threat to religion. Who does not see, he wrote, that the same authority which can establish Christianity in exclusion of all other religions may establish with the same ease any particular sect of Christians in exclusion of all other sects. Madison was probably writing from his memory of Baptist ministers being arrested in his native Virginia. And as a Christian, Madison also noted that Christianity had spread in the face of persecution from worldly powers, not with their help. Christianity, he contended, this is a quote, disavows a dependence on the powers of this world, for it is known that this religion both existed and flourished not only without the support of human laws, but in spite of every opposition from them. Recognizing the idea of America as a refuge for the protester or rebel, Madison, in point number 9, argued that Henry's proposal was a departure from the generous policy which, offering an asylum to the persecuted and oppressed of every nation and religion, promised a luster to our country. Henry's bill was defeated 12-1. And instead, the Virginia legislature took up Jefferson's plan for the separation of church and state. In 1786, the Virginia Act for Establishing Religious Freedom, modified somewhat from Jefferson's original draft, became law. After the bill was passed, Jefferson proudly wrote that the law meant to comprehend within the mantle of its protection the Jew, the Gentile, the Christian, and the Mohammedan, the Hindu, and infidel of every denomination. When Madison went to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, he wanted Jefferson's view to become the law of the land. And as framed in the U.S. Constitution clearly stated in Article 6, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. As one writer put it, the men who fought the revolution may have thanked God and attended church regularly or not, but let's not forget that they also fought a war against a country in which the head of state was the head of the church. Knowing well the history of religious warfare that led to America's settlement, they clearly understood both the dangers of that system and of sectarian conflict. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why, if you ever ask me, I'll tell you. I don't believe the United States was ever a Christian nation, and I fully back the separation of church and state. Let's move on. Isabel Wilkerson, in her book Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, brilliantly lays out how religious beliefs gave way to the enslavement of human beings around the globe. And I highly recommend this book for anyone that is interested in a good read. But she writes in it, in the words of the sacred text of the Western world, the Old Testament, there had been a great flood. The windows of heaven had opened, along with the fountains of the deep, and all of humankind was said to have descended from the 3 sons of the patriarch Noah. By divine instruction, they survived the flood waters in an ark for more than 40 days and 40 nights, and thereafter, Noah became a man of the soil. His sons were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who would become the progenitors of all humanity. Now, y'all know, I don't know if I'm saying Japheth right. God bless you. But one season, Noah planted a vineyard, and he later drank of the wine of the fruit of the vineyard. The wine overtook him, and he lay uncovered inside the tent. Ham, who would become the father of a son, Canaan, happened into the tent and saw his father's nakedness and told his 2 brothers outside. Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. They walked backward into the tent and covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned in the other direction so that they would not see their father unclothed. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what Ham had done, he cursed Ham's son Canaan and the generations to follow, saying, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." The story of Ham's discovery of Noah's nakedness would pass down through the millennia. The sons of Shem, Ham, and Japheth spread across the continents, Shem to the east, Ham to the south, Japheth to the west, it was said. Those who decreed themselves the descendants of Japheth would hold fast to that story and translate it to their advantage. As the riches from the slave trade from Africa to the New World poured forth to the Spaniards, to the Portuguese, to the Dutch, and lastly to the English, the biblical passage would be summoned to condemn the children of Ham and to justify the kidnap and enslavement of millions of human beings and the violence against them. From the time of the Middle Ages, some interpreters of the Old Testament described Ham as bearing black skin and translated Noah's curse against him as a curse against the descendants of Ham. Against all humans with dark skin, the people who the Europeans told themselves had been condemned to enslavement by God's emissary, Noah himself. They found further comfort in Leviticus 25:44, which exhorted them, "Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids." This they took as further license to enslave those they considered religious heathens to build a new country out of wilderness. And thus, a hierarchy evolved in the new world they created, one that they set those with the lightest skin above those with the darkest. Those who were darkest and those who descended from those who were darkest would be assigned to the subordinate caste of America for centuries. Thomas R.R. Cobb, he was a leading Confederate and defender of slavery, wrote 250 years into the era of human bondage in America. He's quoted as saying, "The curse of Ham is now being executed upon his descendants. The great architect had framed them both physically and mentally to fill the sphere in which they were thrown. His wisdom and mercy combined in constituting them thus suited to the degraded position they were destined to occupy." Slavery officially ended in 1865, but the structure of caste remained intact, not only surviving, but hardening. Thomas Pierce Bailey, a 20th century author, wrote, "Let the Negro have the crumbs that fall from the white man's table." And it was Senator James Henry Hammond of South Carolina from the floor of the U.S. Senate in March 1858 that said, "Our slaves are black of another and inferior race. The status in which we have placed them is an elevation. They are elevated from the condition in which God first created them by being made our slaves." Like, what? It was this divine blessing that led people to laws and actions that were reprehensible and abhorrent. But they fully, and I really want us to get this, they fully 100% believed that God was on their side and they were living in his will. This is why I always tell people, be humble in what you believe. Okay. Did you know that in 1908, the trading of lynching postcards that featured victims on them was so revolting that the U.S. Postmaster General banned them from the mails? Literally, hundreds, sometimes thousands of people would gather for a public lynching. Pictures would be taken of the body. Sometimes people would pose next to it, and then they would send that picture to loved ones as if it was like an attraction, like a fun attraction. The amount of those being mailed reached such a fever pitch that they had to ban them. You know what? Let me just drive this home even further. James Q. Whitman, the Ford Foundation professor of comparative and foreign law at Yale Law School, wrote a book titled Hitler's American Model, and in it he recounts events that took place in Berlin, Germany on June 5th, 1934. On this day, 17 Nazi bureaucrats met to discuss how they would impose their new governmental structure as it pertained to race. Their investigations led them to Australia and South Africa, but they were not impressed by them the most. Oh no. Whitman writes, quote, "In debating how to institutionalize racism in the Third Reich, they began by asking how the Americans did it." He continues, "The United States was not just a country with racism. It was the leading racist jurisdiction, so much so that even Nazi Germany looked to America for inspiration." Like I stated earlier, religious beliefs have brought great light and immense darkness. Eugene Cho, in his book, Thou Shalt Not Be a Jerk, reminds us that some historians have reported that Germany was 94% Christian at the start of World War II. But they followed Hitler, a man that viewed Christianity as a religion fit only for slaves. 94%. Immense darkness. I recently had the privilege of dropping everything and being there for one of my best friends that suddenly lost his father. And while driving him up the 5 to take him back home, I witnessed my friend sing of God's goodness in the midst of incredible heartache. And through tears, he declared God's faithfulness in the midst of heart-wrenching tragedy. The next 6 days, I would sit down for meals with his mom, his fiance, and some friends. And every meal, we would hold hands and thank God for his faithfulness. Every meal. Now, during those 6 days, the Capitol was stormed. And I remember being so pissed. I mean, just pissed. And I was pissed, yes, because they stormed the Capitol, which hadn't happened since the War of 1812. But I was really pissed because many of them were doing it in the name of Jesus. And I was livid, and I started to become, a little petty Paul on IG, and I did. But I stopped. I stopped after talking to my big brother, Tim. And even after I stopped posting things, I was still upset. And I remember later on that week, when we were about to sit down for dinner and we stood in a circle to hold hands to pray, I felt this little nudge on the inside of me to look around at the circle and to really look at who was standing in the circle holding hands. And so I did, and I looked up and saw a couple whose ancestry goes back to China and the Philippines, another couple whose heritage goes back to Hong Kong. One was born here and the other Australia. I saw a girl who can trace part of her ancestry back to the Mayflower. I saw the son of Taiwanese immigrants. And I saw him holding his mom's hand, who came to this country and did everything she could to provide for her family in order for them to succeed. Who, in the midst of losing her husband, was still thanking Jesus. Great light. I remember sighing and just thanking God for this country. And I knew that we would be okay. We, as a nation, are not perfect. But I wouldn't trade being an American citizen for another. And people do dumb things in the name of Jesus. But I'm not changing my citizenship out of his kingdom either. Because both are worth the fight. So let them do what they want. Let us enjoy our faiths and this great shared space. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. I truly do appreciate it. Oh, and just in case if you're wondering, I do have one Muslim in my phone now. Ew. Thank you guys so much. God bless you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. It was my pleasure to put it together, and I hope you got something out of it. And if you have, hope so, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button because there are more things coming down the pipe. You don't want to miss it. Have a great day.